It's kind of hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that it's been basically 5 years since the first season of The Ancient Magus Bride ended. It doesn't feel like 5 years. It's very strange to get that into my head. But of course, we are getting a second season in a few weeks after, 5 years, and a lot of concern as to when we would get another season, if we ever would get another season. And I felt like I kind of have to rewatch the first season to get everything back into my head, remember all the specific plot details. And even though we had the OVAs that came out roughly a year ago, I still wanted to re-experience it in preparation for this new season. So I did, and I think it was useful not just to remember everything, but to help me kind of appreciate the characters in a way that I'm not sure I did fully initially. I mean, I always liked them. Chisei especially, I was always a big fan of from when the very first OVAs came out in 2016, the prequel OVAs, because she very early on reminded me of Natsume from Natsume's Book of Friends, who's a very similar character in a lot of ways, because he and Chisei both go through a very similar type of childhood where they see these yokai or spirits, whatever you want to call them, and they're kind of like tormented by them and terrified of them, and of course it freaks other people out. And another thing they have in common is they're constantly being shuffled around between different family members because their parents are gone or out of the picture in some way, and nobody wants to take care of them, right? And a huge part of their childhoods and experiences growing up is feeling alone, feeling like they don't have family, feeling like they don't have a home. And one of the things that happens to both of them in their respective shows is they get that home, they get that family, they get those friends, those people who do care about them, and they actually start to be happy, right? So very early on, I gravitated towards Chisei because she reminded me of a character that I already liked. But what I also really like about Chisei is I feel like the way that she viewed her negative childhood is different from the way Natsume did in a few notable ways. Chisei got so fed up, so detached from everything, from how terribly her family members treated her, how ostracized she was from everything in her life. She was willing to just sell herself in that auction that Elias ended up buying her in. I mean, there is so much just emptiness that you have to be feeling to be willing to do that, to just feel like you have nothing. And at least that would be different. And ultimately, of course, it works out for her because Elias ends up wanting to have her around, and he wants to, at first, right, he has all these various reasons why he wants her. He wants her to see if he can extend a Sleighbaggy's life. He wants her because he wants a bride, and he wants her because he hopes that she will in some way help him be more human, because while he can understand why humans, act the way they do, he doesn't really feel it, right? And that's the main thing he goes through over the course of the show, realizing how to deal with his emotions and how he can understand what they are when he feels them, but also him realizing little by little how important Chisei becomes to him, not just as an experiment, not just as someone to help him learn new things, but as someone he enjoys being around, and someone who, when she's not around, he feels empty. He feels like something's amiss, and he may not be able to quite describe what it is that's different, what it is that's missing, but he feels it, right? And he's starting to sort of understand the feelings he has. And of course, as that's happening, you have Chisei slowly starting to feel like where she is a home, and starting to build a family of sorts with Elias, with Silver, with Ruth, with her various friends, the various people she meets throughout the show. And you see her be happy and feel at home for the first time in her life. And it really is something special, right? That this character who was so broken, so detached, so empty, who felt like she had nothing to live for, does finally get that. And it's rewarding. It makes you happy to see this character get to be happy after everything she went through, after being mistreated all her life, after, being terrified by seeing all these creatures that she doesn't understand and that she doesn't know about, and not having her family, having her father walk out with her brother through means that I imagine that's something that future seasons will focus on. And then, of course, you have Chisei's mom feeling desperate and trying to kill her. She goes through so much, and you know that she deserves to have this happy life. And it's nice that she does eventually get it, despite all the hardship, because it's not like it's easy for her. And she goes through so much crap in season 1, especially towards the end with Cartaphilus. But it's so rewarding to see her achieve that sense of belonging and that sense of comfort and that sense of happiness by the end of it all. And the show does a good job of really establishing that sense of comfort. It's primarily set in this, idyllic English cottage in the countryside. Everything feels so warm and inviting, even when it isn't really, even if when you're dealing with fae that are trying to be inviting and it's only for mischievous means. Regardless of that, it always has that sense of this is a comforting place to belong, a place to feel at peace. And I think it does a very good job of being very atmospheric and being very charming. It's the sort of thing where it makes me wish that Wit would make an Iyashikei, because I think they do a very good job at it. Even though I know they're kind of done with this show, and this obviously is not an Iyashikei, but they could do it. They could. Elias, I think, as a character I've come to appreciate a lot more on the rewatch. Not that I ever had an issue with him, but you definitely get a better sense of his character growth the second time around, because he starts off as this person who seems to be very wise, very in control of everything, very mature, and he's not, right? It is very much so a facade, and you realize that over the course of the show, how this is someone who, despite living for hundreds of years and having all this great magical power, he in a lot of ways has the sensibilities of a child, where he really does not understand a lot of things, specifically with respect to what it means to be like a human, what it means to really feel the emotions that humans feel, to really be able to identify those emotions if he feels them. Over the course of the show, he does a lot of very stupid kind of childish things. I mean, especially towards the end. And even if he has a motive for it, it's okay, come on. Why are you doing this? And he's doing it because he doesn't understand really what he's doing. He doesn't fully recognize the emotions he's feeling and why he's reacting to them in particular ways. He does have to grow and actually sort of fit into the mold that he already had established for himself at the onset of the show. And he's not quite there entirely. By the end, I imagine, as time goes on, he will better fit the way that he presents himself. But it's interesting. It's really interesting to see him, little by little, get a better grasp of what it means to be like a human, even though obviously he's kind of this weird in-between, and they sort of describe him as if an alchemist had tried to make himself more like the Fae, but in reverse, so implying that maybe he's a Fae who tried to make himself more human, and obviously we don't know that. We get a little bit of his backstory, but there's a lot we don't know. There's a lot of stuff about his life before Chisei we don't know, based on some of the faces he wears throughout the show, who are these people? How does he know them? How did they impact him? There's a lot to still learn about Elias, especially with regards to his past. But there's also a lot more to see as far as his character growth and where his journey and his bond with Chisei will take him, and take her as well. It's really, really nice to see the two of them sort of give each other what they really need. Elias gets more of an understanding of what it is to be human and to feel all these various emotions. And Chisei, in a sense, gets something very similar, where she gets to actually have a semblance of a quote-unquote normal life. Obviously, it's a life with magic and stuff, but she gets to have this home and be around these people who care about her and appreciate her and want her around, something she just has not had. Her entire life has been alien to her entire life, to the point where when she first starts to live with Elias, her perspective is, well, you know, he just needs me as an experiment or whatever, and then when he's done, he'll get rid of me, and that's fine, because at least I'll have X amount of time to live this comfortable life, and then she'll just go back to what she's known throughout her entire life. Like, it's so depressing and sad when you hear her say that, and say how she sort of views it all early on, and it makes it even more rewarding when at the end, like, she's not thinking like that. Like she recognizes this is her home, these people are effectively her family, and be happy and enjoy her life after all these years of being mistreated, of having no hope, of having a horrible life. It really makes you appreciate it all in the end. Another thing I really like about the show is, despite how much we see in terms of different magic, you know, applications, different areas of the show, like where the dragons are kept and the auction, all these different like facets of this magical world, it never feels bloated, where like it very easily could have. You easily could have had this sense of too much stuff being thrown at you. It never feels like that. Like, I'm very curious to see more about this world, more about the world of the Fae, more about like different areas and locations of this world, more applications of magic, more, you know, magical traditions and stuff like that. Like, I'm very curious to see how the show further develops its world, and I imagine season 2 might do a decent job of that, because it is being set in this magical college, and I imagine Chise is going to learn all these different things, and we'll learn about it along the way. If I had a concern about the second season, it's if it's all going to be set in this college, I guess I kind of worry that we might lose that sense of comfort that we got in season 1. I'm not sure. Like, it depends. Is Chise going to stay there? Is she going to go back to her home with Elias? Like, how present is Elias going to be? Like, is he going to be separated from her because she's at the college, or is he still going to show up frequently? Like, it kind of depends on how they handle it. I think it would be a shame if Elias takes a back seat because of the change in setting. I think that would be a massive disservice to him and the show. And I hope that doesn't happen, but we'll just have to wait and see. I think there is a lot of potential for this arc, and I really hope it turns out well and gets to further develop the world. So I am very much so looking forward to season 2 coming out in a few weeks as of the time of recording. And it is, I would say, definitely the thing from the upcoming spring season that I am looking forward to the most. And of course, it won't be too long before we discuss everything that's coming out in the spring season that is of interest to me. But that'll be for another time. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. And of course, take care, and I'll see you next time.